They thought humans would conquer, but instead, they came to rescue an entire alien fleet. The galaxy feared humans until they showed up and saved the trapped Armada against all odds. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more amazing tales. The Xerac Dominion's Grand Armada had traveled through thousands of light years before disaster struck. Their journey was supposed to be routine, a simple shift to a new patrol line, but a tiny mistake in their hyperspace calculations threw them into one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. At first, no one understood what had gone wrong. The jump felt normal, the stars stretched into long lines, and every ship followed the formation perfectly. Then everything snapped back to real space with a violent jolt. Instead of the open void they expected, they found themselves inside a collapsing nebula that looked like a swirling storm of red and blue energy. The officers on the bridge felt the floor shake as warning alarms echoed through every hallway. The nebula wasn't just a cloud of dust and gas. It was alive with unstable gravitational waves that twisted the space around them. The moment they arrived, half of their systems went offline. Engines sputtered, navigation screens flickered, and several ships were pushed off course by invisible currents. Some vessels crashed into floating debris, while others barely managed to stabilize. Right away, the Xerac captains knew something was wrong on a scale they had never seen before. The nebula had a reputation across the galaxy. Some called it the Silent Maw, a place where ships entered and never returned. The Xerac had always avoided it, but their mistake had placed the entire Armada right in its center. The gravitational waves acted like a cage, bending every escape path back toward the middle. When the fleet tried to move outward, the space around them twisted again, pulling them deeper into the trap. Many of the pilots felt helpless as they watched their screens fail to show a stable route. Within the first hour, the commanders attempted to restart the hyperspace cores, but the nebula's energy interfered with the delicate systems. The engineers worked in the dark, lit only by emergency lights as they tried to repair shattered circuits. Sparks flew, wires burned, and the smell of overheating metal filled the air. Even the most skilled Xerac mechanics looked frustrated and frightened. They had never dealt with a problem this powerful. Food supplies were also at risk. The Armada carried enough resources for their journey, but not enough for an extended stay in a cosmic death zone. Every officer understood the horrible truth. They could not call for help from their own empire because the nebula scrambled communication signals. Every distress message dissolved into static before leaving the region. They were cut off from the universe, trapped in a silent cage with no one aware of their situation. Many of the younger crew members panicked. They had always been taught that the Xerac Dominion was strong and unbreakable. Seeing their fleet damaged and helpless felt impossible to believe. The senior commanders tried to keep everyone calm, but even they exchanged worried glances whenever the lights flickered. Every passing minute made survival harder, and no one could predict how long the Armada could endure these conditions. The nebula grew more unstable over time. Strange energy storms appeared in the distance, sending violent pulses that shook every ship. The colors outside shifted from bright blue to deep red, as if the nebula itself was warning them that the end was near. Cracks formed in the hulls of several vessels, and engineers worked non-stop to patch them before the pressure tore the ships apart. Medical teams tended to injured crew members who had been thrown around during the first violent shock. Despite all this chaos, the Xerac were not a species that gave up easily. They analyzed every pattern inside the nebula, searching for weaknesses. They mapped the gravitational fields, tracked energy waves, and even tried to push small drones through the thick storm. But each attempt failed. Every path they found collapsed within minutes, trapping them again. A heavy silence spread across the Armada as they realized they had run out of ideas. As days passed, hope began to fade. Many believed the nebula would crush the fleet completely. Others feared they would starve long before that happened. The Xerac Dominion had powerful armies, brilliant scientists, and advanced ships. But none of that mattered here. They were prisoners of a cosmic force far beyond their understanding. Some commanders gathered in quiet rooms, discussing their final resources and preparing their crews for the worst possibilities. The trapped Armada floated helplessly in the storm, waiting for something, anything, that might save them. And just when everything felt hopeless, their scanners detected an unexpected signal approaching from beyond the nebula, a small but steady pulse that did not belong to any Zirac ship. The officers stared at the readings with disbelief as the unknown fleet grew closer, because the one species they never expected to see here, the one species they had been taught to fear, was coming straight toward them. It was the humans, and no one in the Zirac Armada knew whether their arrival meant salvation or destruction. The moment the trapped Zirac Armada detected the incoming human fleet, fear spread through every ship like cold fire. For generations, the Zirac had heard only one kind of story about humans. Stories filled with warnings, threats, and dark legends. Their empire claimed that humans were unpredictable creatures who attacked anything different from them. According to Zirac history lessons, humans expanded not with diplomacy, but with force, crushing anything that stood in their way. So when the scanners showed human ships approaching the collapsing nebula, the first reaction across the Armada was pure panic. On the main bridge of the flagship, officers stared at the glowing screens as the human signals grew stronger. Everyone whispered anxiously. Some believed the humans had only come because they sensed weakness. Others feared humans would destroy them quickly to avoid getting involved in a rescue mission. Even the battle-hardened admirals felt uneasy. These were not enemies they wanted to meet while trapped and powerless. The Zirac Dominion had spent decades portraying humans as chaotic troublemakers in the galaxy. Any unknown attack or disturbance was blamed on Earth. Propaganda shows displayed images of humans fighting, shouting, and conquering. They never showed humans helping others or forming peaceful alliances. Because of these stories, almost every Zirac believed that encountering humans meant danger. To them, humans were reckless explorers who went anywhere they pleased, touching forbidden worlds and interfering with ancient cosmic structures. The Zirac saw this behavior as irresponsible and dangerous, and over time, fear turned into hatred. Even young Zirac cadets grew up hearing that humanity could never be trusted. They were told that humans were emotional creatures who acted first and thought later. So now, inside the collapsing nebula, with their engines failing and their shields weakening, the Zirac felt like prey waiting for a predator. If the humans decided to attack, the Armada had no chance to fight back. Several ships could not even move, and others were barely holding their damaged systems together. The first clear image of the human fleet appeared on the central screen. Their ships were sleek, bright, and powerful looking. They moved in a sharp, organized formation, giving the impression of complete control. This only increased Zirac fear. Humans looked confident, advanced, and unafraid of the nebula's danger. Many Zirac officers whispered that no species would enter this deadly storm unless they had a hidden plan. The younger Zirac soldiers felt their hearts race as they imagined the worst. Some thought humans would destroy them and claim the nebula as a strategic location. Others believed humans would capture their technology or take prisoners. The trapped Armada prepared for an attack they had no way of stopping. Behind closed doors, the Zirac commanders held urgent discussions. Some argued they should send a message demanding humans stay away, but their communication systems were too weak to send a clear warning. Others suggested preparing the remaining weapons, even if they knew their firepower was useless in this unstable environment. A few older captains silently wondered whether the stories they had been told about humans were even true, but fear drowned their voices. Every passing minute felt heavier as the human fleet drew closer. The nebula crackled outside, lightning-like streaks of cosmic energy flashing across the view screens. The Zirac ships groaned under the pressure, lights flickering on and off as more systems failed. And yet, the human signals kept advancing, steady and slow, almost gentle. This confused many. If humans really wanted to attack, why approach so calmly? Why not strike immediately while the Armada was helpless? Some Zirac began to suspect that humans were observing them, studying their weakness, choosing the best moment to strike. That idea terrified everyone. The idea of being watched by a species they had been taught to fear made the atmosphere inside every ship heavy and suffocating. The children of the Armada huddled together with their families, listening to the frightened voices of adults who could no longer hide their fear. Doctors tried to comfort the wounded by telling them everything would be fine. even though they did not believe it themselves. The entire fleet had been mentally preparing for a slow death inside the nebula, but now a new fear replaced the old one: the fear of being destroyed by humans. Still, a few Xerac scientists quietly questioned why humans would risk entering the collapsing nebula at all. It made no logical sense. The gravitational waves were dangerous enough to destroy even the strongest cruisers. No species would willingly fly into such chaos unless they had a different intention. Perhaps, just perhaps, the humans were not coming with violence. Maybe they had seen the distress signals and chosen to help. But this idea seemed impossible to most of the Armada. Their entire lives had taught them that humans only cared about themselves. As the human fleet finally reached the outer edge of the nebula, every Xerac held their breath, hearts pounded, ships trembled, and silence filled every corridor. What the humans would do next could decide the fate of the entire Armada. And none of them were prepared for the truth that humans had come not as conquerors, but as rescuers. On the human flagship Solus, Admiral Elena Reyes stood in front of the main display screen, watching the chaotic storm inside the nebula. The Xerac Armada's distressed signals flickered weakly across the monitor, breaking apart into static again and again. Her crew waited silently for her decision. They all knew the risks. Entering a collapsing nebula was not just dangerous, it was almost impossible. Even the strongest human ships could be torn apart if they miscalculated their path by a few seconds. But turning away meant leaving an entire alien fleet to die alone. Admiral Reyes felt the weight of this choice pressing heavily on her shoulders. Humans had faced danger before, but this situation was different. The Xerac were strangers, and until now, humanity had never interacted with them in a peaceful way. The only information humans had about the Xerac came from distant rumors and incomplete files. Many humans believed the Xerac were an aggressive species, always prepared for war. Helping them might lead to misunderstandings or even conflict later. But Reyes also knew something else. Every human child was taught the same lesson growing up. If someone is in danger and you can help, you try, even if the path is difficult. The bridge crew whispered nervously as another wave of unstable energy flashed across the nebula's surface, lighting it up like a storm of exploding stars. The scanners showed damaged Xerac ships spinning helplessly, some with fires spreading inside, others drifting dangerously close to gravitational cracks. The Armada did not have long left, if the humans waited for permission from the Earth Council or debated too long. The entire Xerac fleet would disappear inside the collapsing cloud, swallowed forever with no trace. Admiral Reyes closed her eyes for a moment and thought about humanity's long history. Humans had made mistakes, fought wars, and struggled to find peace. But they had also grown, learned, and changed. They had built alliances, saved civilizations, and offered help even when none was expected. Humanity was far from perfect, but compassion was their core strength. Reyes opened her eyes again with a calm and steady expression. She knew what she had to do. She turned to her officers and gave the order everyone had been waiting for. "Prepare the fleet," she said firmly. "We're going in." The crew exchanged nervous but determined glances. They understood the danger, but they also felt a sense of pride. This was what humanity stood for, taking risks to save lives, even alien ones, even if the Xerac never thanked them. Even if the mission damaged their ships, they would know they did the right thing. The human fleet activated their stabilizing shields, advanced thrusters, and gravitational anchors. Each ship adjusted its formation to create a protective barrier around the rescue cruisers. The pilots synchronized their controls, preparing for the violent turbulence ahead. Reyes ordered all communication signals to remain unencrypted, sending clear, peaceful messages toward the Xerac fleet. She wanted the aliens to know one simple truth: humanity meant no harm. As the humans moved closer to the nebula, the energy storms grew louder, shaking the ships and making lights flicker. The gravitational pull felt like invisible hands trying to drag them in every direction. Several officers gripped their consoles tightly to keep their balance, but they did not stop. They pushed forward, carefully navigating through each unstable wave, slowly and steadily approaching the trapped Armada. Inside the nebula, the first human rescue beacon lit the darkness. Its bright signal pierced through the swirling clouds, offering a small but powerful ray of hope. The Zyrak crews who saw it stared in disbelief. They had expected attack, aggression, or destruction. Instead, they saw humans broadcasting safety signals, trying to guide damaged ships towards stable zones. This confused many Zyrak officers. For the first time, something didn't match the dark legends they had been taught. On the Solace, Admiral Reyes watched the Zyrak ships try to respond. She could see their hesitation, their fear, their uncertainty, but she did not blame them. If the roles were reversed, humans might also be afraid. She simply continued sending messages of peace, offering assistance, and guiding her fleet closer. Her goal was simple: save lives, no matter whose they were. Behind her calm expression, she knew the risks were increasing every second. The nebula was collapsing faster, and the path back out was shrinking. But she trusted her crew, their training, and their courage. Humanity had faced storms before: political storms, emotional storms, even real cosmic storms, and every time they survived because they chose cooperation over fear. As the human fleet finally reached the Zyrak Armada, Admiral Reyes gave her final command for the moment: begin rescue operations. With that order, humanity stepped fully into the danger, not to conquer, not to claim territory, but to rescue a species that had once feared them. And in that moment, a new chapter in galactic history quietly began. Shaped not by war or power, but by an unexpected act of compassion. The first human rescue ship entered the nebula like a small spark of light cutting through a storm. The Zyrak crews watched in silence as the human fleet pushed deeper into the chaos. Their movements were slow, careful, and strangely graceful. The humans kept their formation tight, protecting each other as waves of unstable energy crashed against their shields. Every few seconds, bright flashes burst around them, but they did not stop. It was the bravest thing many Zyrak had ever seen. Inside one of the Zyrak cruisers, Captain Ralvek stood frozen, trying to understand what he was witnessing. The humans were not firing weapons, not making threats, and not acting like conquerors. Instead, they were transmitting open messages that anyone could listen to. Their voices sounded calm and steady, telling the Zyrak that they were here to help. The messages repeated again and again, breaking through the static just long enough for the confused aliens to hear words they never expected. We are not your enemy. We are here to assist. For the first time since getting trapped, hope flickered inside the Armada, but fear remained. What if this was a trick? What if humans wanted them to lower their guard before attacking? Memories of dark propaganda still echoed in the minds of every Zyrak on board. Stories that painted humans as monsters, unpredictable and dangerous. Some Zyrak officers whispered warnings, telling everyone not to trust the humans. But others felt their fear slowly turning into disbelief. The humans were risking their ships, damaging their shields, and entering the nebula with no sign of aggression. Why would attackers do that? On the Solace, Admiral Reyes ordered her rescue cruisers to move in front of the most damaged Zyrak vessels. The nebula's unstable energy waves were growing stronger, sending sharp bursts of gravitational pressure that could crush a weakened hull. Without hesitation, the human ships positioned themselves between the danger and the trapped aliens. Their shields flared brightly as they absorbed hits that would have destroyed the Zyrak ships instantly. The humans took the damage without complaint, as if protecting strangers was a normal part of their day. Inside the Zyrak ships, crew members stared wide-eyed at the screens. Their entire lives, they had been told humans were selfish and violent. Yet here they were, risking their own lives to defend a fleet that had never even spoken to them. Captain Ralvek watched the shield readings on his monitor, stunned as the human cruisers held back the deadly waves. The humans were acting like guardians, not enemies. As the human fleet pushed deeper, they sent out small rescue drones shaped like glowing spheres. These drones carried emergency power capsules and stabilizers. They flew carefully through the storm, attaching themselves to damaged Zyrak ships, restoring weak shields, and providing temporary oxygen to ships with failing life support systems. Zyrak engineers watched the drones work with amazement. They had never seen technology used so generously. The humans could have kept these devices for themselves, but instead, they shared them with complete strangers. Meanwhile, one human rescue craft approached a heavily damaged Zyrak battleship. Its engines were barely functional, and fires burned across its outer hull. The human ship extended mechanical arms. grabbing the battleship gently and dragging it away from a dangerous gravitational crack. If the Zarak ship had moved even a meter closer, it would have been crushed instantly. The human pilot maneuvered with perfect precision, protecting the massive alien vessel as if it were one of their own. The Zarak officers inside the battleship felt something unfamiliar, a deep emotional shock. They had expected to die, abandoned and alone. Now humans were saving them with no promise of reward. Slowly, the fear that had once filled the Armada began to weaken, replaced by confusion, awe, and something else: respect. For the first time in Zarak history, humans were showing a side no one had believed existed. On the Solace, Admiral Reyes watched the joint scanner readings. She could see Zarak ships slowly stabilizing as her fleet continued to shield them from the nebula's worst storms. She did not demand thanks, did not ask for surrender, and did not offer peace treaties. Her only goal was simple: keep everyone alive. Her officers kept repeating the same message into the nebula: "We are here to help. Follow our rescue beacons. Stay close to our cruisers." Little by little, the first genuine contact between humans and Zarak began. Not with words, not with negotiation, but with action. The humans showed compassion in the middle of chaos, and the Zarak finally saw the truth for themselves. The galaxy had been wrong about humans. They were not conquerors, not invaders, not the monsters of old stories. They were rescuers, willing to risk everything for people they had never even met. And in the heart of the collapsing nebula, a new kind of connection formed between the two species, shaped by courage, sacrifice, and unexpected kindness. Human engineers moved quickly once the rescue cruisers reached stable positions around the Zarak Armada. They carried special suits that protected them from unstable energy waves, and they boarded the damaged Zarak ships without hesitation. The Zarak crews expected humans to act aggressive or demanding, but the moment the engineers stepped inside, they behaved with calm professionalism. They introduced themselves politely, scanned the damaged areas, and got to work as if helping strangers was something they did every day. Many Zarak soldiers were nervous at first. They watched the humans carefully, unsure whether this was a trap or a trick. Some even kept their hands on their weapons, just in case. But the humans ignored the tension and focused on repairing broken systems. They opened toolkits filled with stabilizers, portable reactors, and universal connectors that worked on almost every known alien technology. The Zarak engineers were stunned to see how quickly the humans adapted to unfamiliar machinery. It was as if they had been preparing for this moment for years. On one Zarak medical ship, life support systems were failing. Air was getting thinner, and many injured soldiers struggled to breathe. A group of human medics arrived with emergency oxygen tanks and portable climate stabilizers. They rushed through the hallways, checking the wounded, giving injections, and attaching health monitors to Zarak bodies they had never seen before. They didn't care that the Zarak looked different or that their biology was unfamiliar. They worked with speed, kindness, and complete focus. A young Zarak doctor stood silently watching them, wondering why humans were helping so hard when they could have simply turned away. Meanwhile, human engineers were attaching emergency power cells to the failing reactors across the fleet. These power cells glowed bright blue and carried enough energy to keep a medium-sized ship alive for hours. The Zarak had never seen such compact and powerful devices. Human technology surprised them again and again. Not because it was superior, but because humans shared it without asking for anything in return. Captain Ralvek watched from a distance as a human engineer crawled under a damaged control panel on his ship. The engineer worked fast. His hands steady even as sparks jumped from broken wires. Ralvek finally gathered the courage to speak, asking why the humans were helping them so much. The engineer simply looked up, smiled slightly, and answered with a simple truth: "Because you needed help." The answer shocked Ralvek more than anything he had seen inside the nebula. The Zarak soldiers whispered among themselves as they watched the humans. Some could not believe what was happening. Others felt their long-held fear slowly turning into trust. Every action the humans took showed sincerity. They didn't try to access secret information, didn't try to take control of any system. They didn't even ask for permission to move through the ships. They just helped wherever they saw danger. In another part of the nebula, a human rescue team boarded a Zyrak warship that had suffered heavy internal fires. The crew was exhausted, covered in soot, and close to losing hope. The humans carried advanced foam extinguishers that cooled burning metal instantly. Together with the Zyrak, they put out the fires in minutes. Afterward, the humans shared water and nutrient packs with the tired crew. The Zyrak ate quietly, overwhelmed by the kindness of their unexpected rescuers. As more hours passed, Zyrak officers began assisting the humans with the repairs. Their fear slowly faded as they worked side by side with the engineers from Earth. They exchanged small questions, small smiles, and small gestures of cooperation. For the first time, the two species were not enemies, not strangers, but partners fighting against a deadly environment together. On the Solace, Admiral Reyes monitored the progress reports with pride. Her teams were giving everything they had, repairing hulls, stabilizing reactors, and saving injured crew members. She could see the shift happening in real time. Zyrak transmissions changed in tone. Their voices were no longer filled with fear or suspicion. Instead, there was cautious gratitude, sometimes even respect. As the final rescue drones attached themselves to the last group of damaged Zyrak ships, something extraordinary happened across the Armada. Zyrak captains began sending short, simple messages of thanks. Their voices were stiff, unsure, but sincere. These messages echoed through the nebula like soft lights, and the human fleet received them with quiet smiles. By the end of the operation, the Zyrak had learned something powerful and life-changing. Humans were not the monsters they had imagined. They were brave, compassionate, and willing to risk their lives for others, even strangers. And for the first time in their history, the Zyrak Dominion began to question everything they thought they knew about humanity. Because the species they had once feared was now the one keeping them alive in the heart of the storm. The human engineers and Zyrak navigators worked together in tense silence, mapping the unstable currents inside the nebula. The gravitational waves shifted unpredictably, pulling ships in every direction, and any wrong calculation could crush entire vessels instantly. The humans brought advanced scanners that could predict the strength and movement of the waves for several seconds ahead, while the Zyrak offered their knowledge of local anomalies and hidden energy pockets inside the nebula. Combining human technology with Zyrak experience created a rare synergy, something neither species had attempted before. Admiral Elena Reyes coordinated the operation from the Solace, her eyes scanning multiple screens at once. She calculated engine thrusts, shield alignments, and timing windows for the hyperspace jump. Her officers reported every tiny fluctuation, adjusting the formation in real time. The smallest delay or misstep could trigger a chain reaction that would destroy the fleet. But despite the risks, everyone understood the importance of cooperation. Their success depended on absolute trust that the Zyrak had never extended to another species. On one damaged Zyrak cruiser, Captain Ralvek worked alongside a human engineer. His hands hovered nervously over his control panel. Watching the calculations flicker across the shared screen, the engineer explained the timing of gravitational bursts in simple words, showing exactly when the engines needed maximum power. Ralvek nodded, slowly accepting the human's guidance. It was strange and uncomfortable for him to follow someone he had been taught to fear all his life. But there was no alternative. If they failed, everyone would die. Small drones flew between the ships, relaying data, making adjustments, and guiding smaller vessels through safer pockets. The Zyrak crews began to notice patterns in the humans' methods. They were precise, methodical, and calm, never rushing, always predicting the nebula's unpredictable behavior. Slowly, fear began to mix with respect. The Zyrak were seeing firsthand that humans could act decisively in moments of extreme danger and without ego, greed, or aggression. The plan was complicated and dangerous. It required all ships to accelerate in perfect synchronization for a short period before activating their hyperspace drives. If even one ship lagged by a fraction of a second, it could pull the entire fleet into the nebula's gravitational traps. The idea terrified the younger Zyrak pilots, but the humans explained every step, breaking it into manageable actions. They taught the Zyrak how to read the wave patterns and adjust thrusters with a rhythm. Almost like a dance, each movement had to be precise, measured, and perfectly timed. As the preparation continued, crews from both species shared stories, not in words of war or propaganda, but in shared experience. A young Xerac pilot asked a human engineer why they risked their lives for aliens. The human smiled simply and replied, "Because they are alive, and we can help." It was so simple, so clear, that even the hardened officers felt a wave of understanding wash over them. These humans were not motivated by politics or power, but by compassion, and that was something entirely new to the Xerac. Engineers went from ship to ship, attaching stabilizers, repairing damaged thrusters, and configuring hyperspace relays. Every success brought a small cheer. Every error required immediate correction. The atmosphere in the Armada slowly shifted from fear to tense hope. The humans maintained calm authority while the Xyrac learned, sometimes reluctantly, that cooperation was the only way forward. Each shared task created trust, and trust built courage, something the Xerac had rarely experienced with another species. Finally, after hours of preparation, the route for the hyperspace jump was ready. Detailed projections showed a 4-second window where the entire fleet could escape. The calculations were exact, leaving no room for hesitation. Every captain, human and Xyrac alike, reviewed the plan one last time. Checking engines, shields, and power outputs, they could feel the nebula shifting violently around them. Yet, with a shared understanding, they waited, ready to act. Admiral Reyes gave the final order, her voice calm but firm. "Hold formation and synchronize engines." The human ships glowed brightly as their thrusters engaged, preparing to pull the Xerac vessels out of danger. The combined fleet moved as one, engines humming in unison, timing their acceleration to the exact moment the calculations predicted. It was a delicate ballet of technology, courage, and trust, and in that moment, the two species became partners against the deadly forces of the nebula. All eyes were on the hyperspace jump. The human and Xerac crews held their breath, knowing that success would mean life, and failure would mean instant destruction. Yet, despite the fear, there was a quiet confidence, a belief in teamwork, precision, and the surprising willingness of humans to risk everything for others. It was a trust built in hours, but it was strong enough to hold against the collapsing storm surrounding them. And with that trust, the Armada prepared for its most dangerous leap into the unknown. The combined fleet of humans and Xerac began the final stage of their escape from the collapsing nebula. Every ship's engines roared as they accelerated in perfect synchronization. The nebula's violent gravitational waves threatened to crush them, twisting space and energy around the fleet. But human pilots had positioned their ships to act as anchors, absorbing the strongest forces so that the Xyrac vessels could follow safely. Sparks of energy and flashes of light streaked across the view screens as the storm tested every shield and every hull. Inside the human flagship Solace, Admiral Elena Reyes monitored the fleet closely, her eyes scanning every display, watching the positions, velocities, and energy readings of every ship. She could see the Xyrac struggling to maintain formation, their damaged engines threatening to fall behind. Her officers reported constantly, adjusting shields and propulsion to compensate. Every second was critical, and the tiniest mistake could destroy the Armada. Captain Ralvek of the Xerac flagship gritted his teeth as he fought to keep his damaged vessel on course. His engineers worked frantically to stabilize failing reactors, while human drones hovered nearby, delivering emergency power cells and fixing broken systems in real time. Sparks flew across the control panels, and alarms blared. But the crew followed the human instructions without question. They had learned to trust them, even in the face of overwhelming danger. The nebula seemed almost alive, pulsing violently, its stormy energy waves clashing with the shields of the fleet. Sections of the Armada were pushed to the brink of destruction, and every officer felt the terrifying pull of the nebula's gravity. Yet, human ships remained steady, acting like protective walls, taking the brunt of the force so that the Xyrac could maneuver safely. Each impact sent shudders through the fleet, but no ship was lost, and every vessel in danger was guided to stability. The hyperspace jump had to happen within an exact 4-second window, and the fleet approached that moment with tense precision. Every ship lined up according to the calculations, every engine thrust perfectly timed. Even a minor misalignment could trigger disaster. The Zyrak crews felt a strange mixture of fear and awe as they watched the humans coordinate the maneuver. They had never seen such calm under pressure, such absolute focus and control. On smaller Zyrak vessels, young pilots clutched their consoles, hearts racing, but they followed the human instructions exactly. Their fear transformed into concentration, trusting the humans to guide them through the deadly storm. The synchronization felt like a single living entity. Each ship a part of a massive organism, moving with rhythm, responding instantly to the unpredictable forces around them. The final seconds approached, and every crew member counted in silence, their eyes glued to screens and instruments, engines humming at maximum output. The nebula lashed out one last time, energy spikes colliding across the fleet, threatening to tear ships apart. But human shields flared brighter than ever, absorbing hits meant for others. And stabilizing thrusters kept even the weakest Zyrak vessels in place. Time slowed as the 4-second window opened, the fleet moving in perfect harmony toward their only chance at survival. At the critical moment, Admiral Reyes gave the command, "Engage hyperspace jump now." Lights flashed across the bridge as energy surged through the hyperspace drives. Ships vibrated, hulls strained, and the nebula seemed to scream around them. Then a blinding streak of light enveloped the entire Armada, engines roaring in unison, pushing the fleet out of the collapsing storm. The Zyrak held their breath, unable to believe they had survived. Seconds stretched into eternity as every ship was pulled into hyperspace, leaving the dangerous nebula behind. The stars stretched into streaks of light, the swirling chaos of the storm reduced to nothing, and then, suddenly, they were free, emerging into calm, open space. Safe at last, cheers and shouts erupted across both fleets, humans and Zyrak alike. Each officer and crew member felt relief like they had never known before. Captain Ralvek stared out at the calm starfield, his hands trembling slightly. The Zyrak crews around him began to realize the scale of what had just happened. They had survived impossible odds, rescued not by their own empire, but by a species they had been taught to fear. The humans had risked everything to save them, and that truth sank deep into their hearts, changing the way they thought about the galaxy and about humanity. As the fleet stabilized and assessed the damage, there was a quiet sense of awe among the Zyrak. They began to speak to the humans, not with suspicion, but with gratitude and respect. Small conversations started forming, pilots exchanging technical advice, medical teams sharing techniques, and in that calm moment after the storm, both species realized they had formed a bond in the crucible of danger, a bond built on courage, trust, and the choice to save lives over seeking power. The humans had arrived not to conquer, not to demand loyalty, but to rescue. And through that act, they had rewritten history in the hearts of the Zyrak, showing that compassion could be stronger than fear, that courage could overcome despair, and that in the darkest moments, even the most unlikely allies could become the difference between life and death. The Zyrak Armada emerged from hyperspace into open space, every ship intact, battered, but alive. The crews slowly began to process what had just happened. They had survived a storm that should have destroyed them, and they had done it not by their own power alone, but because humans had risked everything to save them. Captain Ralvek looked out from his flagship at the human fleet surrounding them, and for the first time in his life, he felt a strange mixture of gratitude and awe. He had been taught to distrust humans, to fear them. But now he realized that everything he had been told was only a small part of the truth. Reports began arriving from across the Armada, each Zyrak captain describing in detail what humans had done to protect them. From shielding damaged ships to delivering emergency power cells, from medical assistance to guiding pilots through dangerous currents, every story told the same truth. Humans had come not as conquerors, but as rescuers. Even the youngest and most skeptical Zyrak were forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about Earth's people. On the Solace, Admiral Elena Reyes allowed herself a small smile. Her fleet had completed the impossible mission, and everyone was safe. The humans did not boast, did not demand credit, and did not make political statements. They simply ensured every Zyrak vessel had a chance to live. Every human officer and crew member carried out their tasks calmly, professionally, and with compassion, showing that humanity's true strength was not in weapons or fleets, but in the courage to do what was right. As communication channels reopened, Xerac leaders began transmitting messages of thanks to the human fleet. The first messages were short, hesitant, and formal, but they carried genuine emotion. "Your species has saved ours," one officer wrote. "We are alive because of your courage." Others followed, some asking questions about humans, their technology, and their intentions. For the first time, the Xerac reached out with curiosity and trust, rather than fear and suspicion. The news of the rescue spread quickly through the Xerac Empire, reaching the higher councils and historians who had long believed humans were dangerous conquerors. The accounts of the Armada's survival challenged old propaganda, rewriting the story of humanity in the minds of the Xerac. Entire fleets and colonies began to question the tales they had been taught for generations. The humans had arrived as strangers, unknown and feared, yet they had performed acts of bravery and kindness that changed history in a single day. Xerac crews began exchanging knowledge and resources with the humans. Tentative partnerships forming where once there had been only distrust, engineers discussed technology and repairs, medical teams shared techniques, and pilots compared navigation strategies. Small conversations became friendships, and friendships began to form alliances. All of it was built on the foundation of the humans' actions in the nebula, a demonstration that choices, not words, defined who a species truly was. Captain Ralvek finally spoke directly to Admiral Reyes, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Your people have shown us a side of humanity we never expected," he said. "We feared you, but now we see you as something greater." Reyes nodded calmly, understanding the weight of her words. "We acted because it was the right thing to do," she replied simply. "We do not seek conquest or reward, only to protect life when we can." The honesty in her voice impressed Ralvek deeply, confirming what he and his crews had already witnessed firsthand. For the first time in the galaxy, humans were not just seen as a distant, aggressive species. They were seen as a force for compassion, courage, and collaboration. The Xerac Empire began planning to honor the day humanity had saved them, recording it in their histories and teaching it to future generations. The story of the Armada's survival would become a symbol of hope, a lesson that even the most feared creatures could act with bravery and kindness. As the human fleet prepared to leave the Xerac territory, waves of respect and gratitude followed them. No one doubted that Earth's people had made a difference, not through power or weapons, but through action and heart. And in the quiet moments after the storm, as stars stretched across calm, open space, the Xerac Armada realized something profound. Humanity had arrived not to conquer, but to rescue. And that simple, selfless act had forever changed the way the galaxy would see them. The memory of the humans' courage, their patience, and their willingness to risk everything would remain with the Xerac for generations. A species once feared for being chaotic and dangerous was now respected as a beacon of hope, and the bond formed in the heart of the collapsing nebula promised a new era of trust and cooperation between the two civilizations. In that moment, the galaxy learned that compassion could be stronger than fear, and courage could rewrite the story of entire worlds.